It's October 6, 1944, in Capellen, Belgium. A war photographer trails behind Harold Marshall and Corporal Cormendy as they scout hedgerows north of Antwerp. That evening, someone jokes about the photo opportunity in the battalion diary. Everyone thinks the Germans are finished, that this will be quick. Harold wipes black grease off his thumb and checks his rifle by touch. What he finds in the next few hours will make that confidence look insane. Fresh boot prints where they shouldn't be. Deeper trenches. A glint of steel at a drainage culvert. And 1,200 yards ahead, a raised rail embankment, maybe 2 men high, with a setup so ruthless it turns open ground into a killing floor. Machine guns on top, riflemen dug into the flanks, perfect overlapping fire. The beet crop hides your ankles, nothing more. Harold reports it up the chain. The numbers are brutal. Distance, seconds under fire, bullets downrange. The math screams don't go. Within 7 days, 4 company commanders will be gone and over 200 men will become casualties crossing that field. What they didn't know, Harold had already written the ending. Between October 6th and that embankment on October 13th, that's where everything happens. The soldiers think they're making a quick run to the Rhine. Instead, they're walking into a drowned winter. German paratroopers, the good ones, are dug in along the dikes, the rail lines, in the hedges. The polders are flooding. Tanks sink up to their bellies in mud. The way forward is close, slow, and brutal. Scouts feeling for ditches, platoons taking houses one at a time, small boats pushing into gunfire just to reach a seawall. Dried mud crusts along Harold's cuffs and smock, more crawling than walking in this work. Cormendy's breath hangs white in the cold air. They're out here to learn the land. How far a ditch runs, whether a hedgerow hides a drainage pipe they can crawl under, where the rail bed starts. North of Antwerp is nothing but water and obstacles. As Harold scouts, the picture sharpens. The trenches run deeper than expected. Boot prints show up in spots that should be empty. Small things that point to something much bigger. From where the Canadians start to that embankment, roughly 1,200 yards of completely open ground. Almost no cover. Perfect killing field. That's exactly what the Germans built. Harold and Cormendy slip back through the hedges, quiet and careful. They report what they found up the chain. Intelligence officers plot angles and guess at enemy positions. The numbers are brutal. Distance to cover, seconds under fire at a given pace, how many bullets a Bren gun can put down range. The math doesn't work in anybody's favour. But at corps level, bigger strategic numbers push everyone forward anyway. Antwerp is taken, but until the Scheldt estuary is clear of German guns, the port is useless. Every day lost means food and fuel don't get unloaded. That evening, Harold goes out again to check a paved farm lane angling toward the embankment. He feels the ground with the back of his hand. It's cold and getting softer. The weather's turning bad. The ditches are half full. Someone's opened the sluices. Flooding is being used as a weapon. Later, the RAF will blow the Walcher End dikes, but right now, even knee-deep water turns a walk into a slow wade. Tanks that moved fine in summer sink to their bellies in winter mud. Back at company, someone reads out a number. In the last big Canadian push against this same kind of defence, a whole battalion lost over 100 men in minutes. It hits hard, then somehow doesn't. Different ground, different day, but the same order comes anyway. Get across. The scouts leave their notes. The staff marks the map with grease pencil. Hedges, ditches, suspected gun pits, that rail line marked like a bruise across everything. The order comes the next morning from higher up, and it's straightforward. Get across. The scouts' work feeds into a plan that still believes in speed. 2 things stick with you from this whole day. That roof shot at 7 in the morning is real, perfectly clean. The men tell it 3 different ways. And every version ends with someone laughing because nobody died. Dearden's platoon holds the junction, but it cost them a Bren barrel burned too hot to use and a private with a busted shoulder who won't go back for treatment because he can still carry magazines with his other hand. They move forward carefully, like a man walking on a sprained ankle. Step by step, the village can be learned and taken this way. But the island can't be taken from this direction. If you can't get past the causeways and embankments, you need another plan. You need to come from the sea. October 13th, 1944, John Dubetz is moving across a field in late morning, eyes down, not really watching where he's going. The raised railbed ahead seems close until suddenly the air explodes around him. Fire tears into the earth and beet tops scatter everywhere like confetti. The noise hits in waves. A machine gun hammers out in quick bursts. Another one rattles on and on. Mortars pop like dull thuds. John keeps moving, and he's learnt this fast, because if you stop and lie down in the open, you're done for. To his left, an officer yells at the men to keep their heads down. Then he goes down himself. The sergeant takes over and starts shouting, and the word spreads through the line like wildfire. Smoke shells burst behind them, but the wind pushes the smoke the wrong way. The cover they were counting on isn't there. Guys in the middle of the field get hit first. The men on the bank can see them. The attackers can only guess. In a few minutes, a whole battalion takes more than 100 casualties. 56 dead, nearly 100 wounded, over 20 captured, all 4 company commanders gone. A kid from Montreal is holding his hand over a hole in his leg, wondering if he should keep walking. A stretcher team steps onto a wooden plank road and hopes they make it across. A corporal sees his section starting to break and angles toward a hedge, barely a foot high, but enough shadow. It saves 3 men. John just keeps going, because the math is simple. Forward. At 40 yards, the machine gun on the bank has to tilt down. He loses it under the slope and his helmet falls off without him noticing. At the base of the embankment, everything is dirt and grease, and the thick, close smell of torn beets and sweat. The first guy he sees is face down with his left hand under the rail, the metal staining his fingers black. 2 others are pressed together nearby, breathing shallow so they don't have to lift their backs. The rail is warm. A young officer tries crawling and keeps calling for someone named Mac, but he can't remember the last name. John tucks his chin into the shadow and waits. The men who were there later put it simply, all 4 company commanders were killed. A massacre. We couldn't even raise our heads. In a minute, the battalion isn't a battalion anymore. Just groups hugging a dirt bank. Nobody even talks about getting up again. Over 1,000 yards with enemy guns watching means 8 to 10 minutes of steady fire if you walk, longer if you crouch. Machine guns firing 1,200 rounds a minute don't even need to hit you to move you. They push you where they want. Mortars, adjusted by men who've lived here for weeks, step their fire 5 yards at a time, bracketing perfectly. A mile-wide field with nothing to hide behind eats men faster than your brain can process. Smoke works great if it stays between you and the guns, but on a day with crosswind, the shells burst and drift away from where you need them, leaving a clear window for the gunners. The hedges run the same direction as everyone's trying to go. They'd help if they were tall enough to block the sight lines. Most here are waist-high, trimmed neat like farm fences. 1 machine gun sweeps the whole lane. The guys with the guns were good. You can hear it in how they fire, see it in how the mortars bracket a target. That same skill will be blind and useless when smoke and rockets come down on the next dike and the ships put men exactly where those guns can't point fast enough. One thing stays with the men. A stretcher team from the Black Watch carries someone across that plank 3 times while fire chases them. The first guy who let go doesn't hesitate the second time. The other bearer is the last company commander to go down, and he does it while pointing at something, not saying a word. The men who see it don't remember what he said, they just remember his hand. By afternoon, the surviving groups along the bank are pulled back one by one under covering fire. The smell of cordite and beet juice and wet wool goes home with them in the trucks. The battalion can't attack again that day. The Canadians understand something now in their bones that they didn't understand on the parade ground. You don't sprint across a winter polder. You take it apart piece by piece with your hands. Whatever comes next won't look like this. If speed doesn't work, what does? The answer is fighting the way the ground and water want you to fight. House by house, then by water. It's just after 7 in the morning, on October 15th, 1944. A sharp crack splits the air above a 2-story house where the Royals have set up their tactical headquarters. An armour-piercing round punches straight through the roof and comes out the other side, leaving a hole about the size of a thumb right above a sergeant's head. Nobody gets hurt. The hole is so clean and neat, like someone drilled it with a carpenter's tool, that it stops everyone cold. When the enemy can thread a bullet through your headquarters roof like that, you stop complaining and start paying attention. That same night, Sergeant Edward Hughes Dearden crouches in a doorway with 11 Platoon B Company of the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry. The streets around him are narrow and slick with mud. Blackout curtains sag in the windows. Every house is a maze of corners and staircases where trouble could be waiting. Dearden counts down on his fingers and his men go in fast. First room. A stove, a table, a photo of a boy in a dark suit on the wall. The window facing the street is just an empty black hole where the glass used to be. The next room has a broken bed, nothing else. But at the back door, a German soldier with a grenade is waiting. He almost throws it, but then he hears something, a boot scraping on the landing upstairs. A quick burst through the stair treads, a heavy thump. The house smells like old coal and fresh sweat. The platoon holds what they've taken. Upstairs, 2 windows become firing positions looking down at the street. A runner carries a note back to the company commander. The house is clear, but they need more ammunition, and 2 stretchers. Outside at the T-junction, another squad is pinned down by machine gun fire. The PIA team whispers about angles and backblast, whether they can fire from a doorway using the brick wall as a shield. They decide they can make it work. While they're sitting on someone else's kitchen floor sorting ammunition, the men joke about that morning's roof shot. Laughing keeps your hands from shaking. Dutch row houses are deep and narrow, rooms stacked front to back with a hallway and stairs that turn at a landing. The real danger is the blind corner at the top, where a man with a machine pistol can wait and shoot down. You throw a grenade into that dead space, cover it with a Bren gun from across the hall, then move quick and low. Windows look like cover until you realise that's exactly where the enemy wants your head to be. It's safer to shoot through plaster. About 30 men can hold 2 houses and the street between them, or 3 if the houses connect. Any more and you don't have enough people. Fighting comes in bursts, 10 minutes of noise and chaos, then about 20 minutes of quiet while both sides catch their breath and reshuffle. This is a slow, grinding kind of war. Just before dawn, Dearden hears a counterattack building 2 streets over, maybe a dozen German soldiers shouting, boots on stone, 3 quick shots, and then 1 long burst. He could pull back to the last cross street and avoid getting cut off. Instead, he stays put. If he leaves, the Germans get a clear lane to the main road. If he holds, he forces them into the alley where his Bren gun can rake them from the side. He tells his section to get ready. Soldiers who could mow down an open field are now fighting through hallways. Their training doesn't work here, their mortars can't help, they can't see past the next door. 2 things stick with you from this whole day. That roof shot at 7 in the morning is real, perfectly clean. The men tell it 3 different ways, and every version ends with someone laughing because nobody died. Dearden's platoon holds the junction, but it cost them a Bren barrel burned too hot to use and a private with a busted shoulder who won't go back for treatment because he can still carry magazines with his other hand. They move forward carefully, like a man walking on a sprained ankle. Step by step, the village can be learned and taken this way, but the island can't be taken from this direction. If you can't get past the causeways and embankments, you need another plan. You need to come from the sea. It's October 31st, 1944, in Ostend Harbour. Basil Wolfe is standing on the deck of a small control ship called LCH-269. The air smells like diesel and rope, with that last hint of summer fish. There are aerials sticking up everywhere. Down below, the radio room is crammed with equipment, code sheets, and mugs that rattle whenever the engines shift. Basil's wearing a wool cap and holding a chipped enamel mug. His fingernails are still greasy from working on the engines that morning. Then the word comes down, cast off at 7:15 tonight. A squadron of about 27 small craft carrying roughly 400 men is heading out. They'll pass Ostend and reach Walker End by dawn. The briefing doesn't take long. They're talking about an island with broken dikes, flooded fields, and gun batteries dug into concrete. These batteries can outgun these little ships by miles. Commandos are going to land on the beaches. LCH-269's job is to control the run-in and relay orders from the bigger guns out on the horizon. The commander makes it clear this is going to cost lives. The goal is to get men onto that wall and keep them there. Night falls and the coastline disappears. All you've got is water slapping the hull and the glow of cigarettes in the dark. Wolf leans over his charts, quietly repeating his bearings to himself. The deck rocks as the sea gets rougher. Down in the crew quarters, a stoker stashes an extra pair of dry socks in his uniform. These men aren't under any illusions about being invincible. They know what they're walking into, and they think they can handle it. Then dawn comes, grey and metallic tasting. There's no time for anything except work. LCH 269 takes her position. Basil's got headphones on, and the whole world is coming through them at once. Call signs, distances, coxswains swearing as they ride the waves, a beachmaster already shouting before he even has a beach. Rockets scream overhead. Naval guns miles away crack the sky open. Smoke fills the water like a hallway. Each craft moves like a lung, and together they're the first real breath this drowned island has had in months. Basil makes a small correction, 2 degrees to starboard, to miss a shoal. Nobody remembered this shallow spot until some fisherman showed it to someone with his hands in a pub somewhere, and somebody sketched it on a napkin. Now it's a note in the margin of a chart. That's where people live, in the margins. One coxswain decides in a split second to beach hard and hit the dike nose first. Waiting for the perfect moment just gives those gun batteries more time to aim at you. He picks his wave, rides it in, and tells his bowman to brace. Steel hits stone. Men pour out and scramble up the concrete slope, slick with algae, clawing for anything to hold on to. One guy loses his rifle and climbs with both hands. His boot leaves a green smear that looks like paint until the machine gunner on top realizes that smear shows exactly where the next man will be. He aims too low. That single mistake saves a life. Those big coastal guns that should be untouchable suddenly can't see anything but smoke and spray and the undersides of waves. Their training's still good. You can hear it in how steady they're firing, the rhythm of it. But a good technique only works if you know what you're aiming at. When everything turns to chaos, your math becomes a prayer to keep yourself calm. The whole operation runs from November 1st through the 8th. The support squadron loses about 30 landing craft and over 300 men killed. Those aren't just statistics, they're names written first in pencil and then in ink. But in return, the batteries that shut down the port go silent. Antwerp opens on November 28th because of moments exactly like this one, when a coxswain decides to hit that concrete now instead of waiting. The radio keeps humming. Bearing 260 on now. Smoke, give me more smoke. Left 2. Wolf repeats everything, confirms it, repeats it again. He knows when to stay quiet because sometimes just hearing a steady voice, even if it only says steady, makes all the difference. He's steadying people he'll never meet. A commando captain comes through the radio with gravel in his voice. On the wall, he says. Then 10 seconds of nothing that feels like falling. When he comes back, he's laughing quietly. On the wall, he says again. Wolf writes 3 words in his notebook. On. The. Wall. Coastal batteries win through mathematics, long-range guns, solid mounts, preset distances, spotters to correct their shots. A support squadron wins by breaking that math. Smoke turns the whole targeting problem from geometry into a guessing game. Rockets spread out over a wide stretch of dike, forcing the defenders to take cover at exactly the wrong times. Landing craft packed with guns don't trade shots one for one. They throw everything at windows and gun positions until nobody dares stick their head out. The control ship doesn't fire at anything. She just makes sure everyone else's fire lands together. Up close, the battery's advantage shrinks. Those big guns have trouble aiming sharply downward, and the concrete walls that protect them from far away don't work against men hugging the dike face right below them. The batteries aren't bad. They're just locked out of the distances and angles where they'd win. By mid-morning, the beach looks like a junkyard. Bits of wood and wire tangle in the surf. A piece of landing ramp keeps bumping against a hull, floating away like it's deciding what to be. Wolf wipes the sweat from his temple, leaving a grey streak. He eats a hard biscuit that tastes like cardboard and salt. He's trying not to count how many voices have gone quiet in his headphones. Counting comes later. A scarred coxswain drives his landing craft into a gap between concrete obstacles and rocks because he sees an opening where another man would only see a wall. His bowman drops to both knees and becomes a ladder for the next group of men. This coxswain won't get a medal for this. Maybe a story later, and the quiet satisfaction of reading a wave right. He'll be asleep before his head hits a bunk that night. A beachmaster barks, "Move! Move!" Not angry, just direct. That calm on the wall opens up into the whole day like a door. If anyone's thinking about the run across the open ground, they don't have any breath left to say so. They're turning the flood into an advantage. By coming from the sea, they've sidestepped all the ground that turned other assaults into slaughter. They've created something new with smoke and water. 8 days for the operation. Dozens of craft gone, hundreds of men. But there's one number underneath it all that justifies everything: Antwerp. A deep water port that opens on November 28th. Without it, supplies can't move into the heart of Europe. With it, food, ammunition, winter coats, everything moves faster. It shortens the war for someone who will never know Basil Wolf's name. A shore party radios in, they can't see their marker. Wolf's got 3 options, but he does a 4th thing instead. He buys them 10 seconds with a short call. Stand by. Stand by. He reads off the last few positions and hears a gun closer than it should be. He reroutes them slightly, gets a scene, and then says, "Go." It's a tiny moment, but it's exactly why he's there. Somewhere behind concrete, a battery officer shouts corrections to his gun crew who can't see where their shots are landing. His whole world has shrunk to numbers and cables. He's not stupid, he's just in an impossible position. In 10 minutes he'll realise those men he outranged are now beyond his angles. In a day, his position gets overrun. In a week, the port he helped close opens anyway. The satisfaction isn't watching him suffer. It's watching how physics and human will combine to make his confidence wrong. The ground that costs men becomes the water that carries them. You can land on a wall, but you have to keep that wall alive. At 9:20 the next morning, a gunboat takes a hit that should end everything. But it doesn't. It's November 1st, 1944. 9:20 in the morning. A shell tears into the side of LCF-37 and splits that thin landing craft wide open. Water starts pouring in, and suddenly everyone has to act fast. Sergeant Robert Greer is a Royal Marine running a gun crew. They've turned this metal box into something the enemy can't ignore. He stays at his post long enough to buy someone else a chance to live. That first hit is bad. Men grab whatever's closest, wet hammocks. They jam them into the hole to stop the hissing. Someone with a wrench burns their hands, tightening a door to seal the compartment. Greer yells orders to swing the guns left. There's still a gap in the enemy's defences, spitting smoke between explosions, and someone can see it. A loader on deck pops his shoulder from the strain but keeps going anyway. The next shell is half loaded, and nobody wants to drop it on a deck that won't stay level. The ship is breathing through that hole, and the hole is breathing back. Their battery does serious work. When they can see what they're shooting at, they're accurate. Smoke hides everything sometimes, so they guess, but their guesses still hurt. Another hit splinters open a storage bin, sending wood flying like knives. Greer tastes paint and gunpowder. That taste gets stuck in his nose and won't leave. Roughly 30 support ships will be lost here this week. Over 300 men won't come home. Leading seaman Owen Joseph McGrath runs a small boat. He makes run after run, pulling men out of water that's full of oil and rope, and cold that'll stop your heart in about 10 minutes if you're not careful. He positions smoke canisters to shield another craft carrying wounded. He calls it work. Later he'll get a medal for it. Right now he just gets a nod and a fresh can of smoke. An LCF is basically a steel box with guns bolted on wherever they fit. The armour is thin, but there's backup systems and trained people. When a shell punches a hole, the first thing you do is keep the ship from sinking. Hammocks and anything soft get shoved in there to slow the water until you can get a proper patch in place. The ship is divided into compartments. Lose one, keep the rest. Damage control is drilled into every person. They all know which valve to turn and which ladder to clear. The guns aren't meant to be surgical at this range. They're just hoses throwing metal at target after target, not to win a fight, but to make the enemy keep their heads down so the guys on the beach can breathe. On paper, they're outranged, but they win by being in the wrong place long enough for the paper to not matter anymore. Under pressure, decisions become automatic. Stay at the gun or go patch the hole. Wait for an order or grab whatever's in your hand and plug it. Create a splash wall for the men on the dike, or wait for a clean shot. For Greer, it's always the same choice. Do what keeps the next guy alive. By afternoon, something shifts. A battery that's been firing all morning suddenly stops, misses a beat, then another. A lookout swears he saw an officer running across a parapet holding his hat on with one hand because the wind picked up. Someone says the word withdraw and actually means it. The men on the beach feel that gap. When the big guns stop, you can hear men breathing. The island starts losing fights it used to win. The official record says, first hit at 9:20, hole plugged with hammocks. Later someone writes, success due to the naval support craft. That's not just empty words when you're still smelling your own coat burning and can't figure out why, because you don't remember leaning against that hot metal plate. The fighting distance starts at thousands of yards and ends at tens. Shells that explode 10 yards short destroy lungs and legs. A man in cold, oily water has about 10 minutes before his hands can't hold a rope anymore. The pumps move hundreds of gallons a minute, but a hole the size of a helmet lets in more than that if the sea wants it badly enough. A signalman won't leave his post when ordered below. Instead, he taps out something he's not supposed to send, beach holds, because it's the only thing the men at the dike and on the little ships need to hear right now. He'll get chewed out later by someone who doesn't smell like paint. He'll take it, and he'll still sleep that night. By afternoon on November 2nd, Greer is gone. The craft he served is more hull than ship now, and yet men are still standing on it. The deck he held up gave someone else a few more minutes. The beachhead survives because men like him refuse to bend. When the last battery goes silent, nobody celebrates. They just stop shouting and let their throats hurt. You can't outthink this. You have to outlast it. The men who were supposed to lose outlasted their enemy instead. When the guns finally go quiet, the island has to answer some other way. It answers with a white flag. November 3rd to 8th, 1944. Walcheren Island. Soldiers patrol narrow causeways, really just thin strips of land between black water and even blacker mud. The air in the drowned fields smells like iron and grass. Kitchen floors sit under an inch of murky water, the kind that mixes salt and fresh together. Tobacco flakes and an onion skin drift on top, never sinking. A commando sergeant touches a wall with the back of his hand. The cold pushes right back. Bunker after bunker, the island surrenders. Some are empty, except for footprints on the floor. Others hold two men who look like kids. The soldiers taking their surrender are polite about it. Tired polite, the kind that comes from knowing you could be on the other side tomorrow. You hear danke and cheers in the same breath, and nobody thinks twice. A British officer, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Dawson, takes a formal surrender. The paper is soaking wet. Everything is wet. Pens run too fast on the soggy fibres, letters blooming and spreading. Someone finds a drier sheet to blot the signatures, like a nurse stopping blood. The scratch of a pen across wet paper sounds soft, almost gentle. A squad reaches a culvert with a white cloth waving from it. The hand holding it stays hidden. The corporal in charge has 1 second to decide. Let them surrender or throw a grenade. He doesn't throw it. The hand comes up empty, and a kid climbs out with his hands in the air. That corporal sleeps easier, knowing his choice didn't get him killed. It didn't. A coastal battery crew sits on the ground, hands behind their heads. They spent months moving tons of metal with a lever and an order. Now their tools are gone. Little ships cough smoke in the distance. The thing that kept Antwerp locked down is opening. Here's the thing. Every unit on the front needs food, ammunition, fuel, spare parts, winter clothes. Everything travels by water until it can't, then by road and rail. Before Antwerp opens, the supply line is stretched thin. Trucks use fuel just to carry fuel. Tyres blow out in the cold. Equipment breaks before it gets to where it needs to be. But Antwerp is a deep water port close to the fighting. When it opens on November 28th, ships unload days closer to the front instead of weeks. A single freighter carries thousands of tons, tonnage that would take entire truck convoys and weeks of bad weather. In winter, distance is the real enemy. Shorten it, and you shorten how long the men are freezing. The Battle of the Scheldt costs around 12,000 Allied casualties. About 6,000 are Canadian. Walcheren alone takes hundreds of close support losses and dozens of landing craft. This is what opening a port costs. It's done, a platoon sergeant says, then laughs once, like a cough. In a logbook somebody writes, "Port open" next to the date. That's sometimes how history looks, just a hand in a small space writing something that changes everything. A crane operator climbs a creaking ladder and flips a switch that hasn't moved since early September. The motor hums, the hook swings. Out on the river, a freighter noses into the brown water. Men on the dock clap twice and go back to work, because now there's more work than ever. Somewhere north, a soldier who ran across a rail line on October 13th hears the port is open. He still smells the field, the bank, the plank road when he tries to sleep. The myth of the quick victory dies here, the lifeline lives. The story that started with men running across a field ends with steel moving up a river.